Tazria, and God spoke to Moshe saying, speak to the children of Israel and say, Isha ki Tazria. By the way, this is not in the Rashi, but I'm going to tell you something about this. Isha ki Tazria, v'yalda zachar. If a woman will give birth or become pregnant, and she'll give birth to a male, v'tamash shivas yamim, then she will be ritually impure for 7 days. Kimei nidas divosa titma. According to the days of her flow, of her menstrual flow, she will become ritually impure. Biblically speaking, after a woman gives birth to a male, she's only ritually impure for 7 days. And then after that, she's ritually pure. And rabbinically speaking, we say all the blood she has until she has 7 clean days after she gives birth, she's a nida. But biblically speaking, we say that blood, after the first 7 days, she goes to the mikvah, and then the blood she'll see then, of course, because every woman has blood coming from their body after they give birth. And rabbinically speaking, we say that blood is going to be like a nida blood. But from the words Isha ki Tazria, the later rabbis determined that if a woman becomes pregnant via, bless you, gesundheit, that if a woman becomes pregnant via in vitro fertilization, we say that that bris should not override Shabbos, and the bris will only take place on the next day, which is Sunday, because it says Isha ki Tazria, that if she becomes pregnant in the I guess typical way. Isha Rashi says Isha ki Tazria, Amar Rabbi Simwai. Kishem sheyitziraso shel Adam achar kol behema chayav of b'ma'aseh bereshis. Just like the creation of man happens after an animal, a domesticated animal and a fowl in the creation story, kach torato, so too its laws, meaning the law of how you deal with the birth, are explained after the laws of the beasts and the fowl, meaning to say that after we describe the sacrifices, now we're going to go into the human beings, but almost the human being sacrifice, which is what? Which is the male is sacrificing a portion of his body, and the woman is also becoming ritually impure, and she has to bring a sacrifice in order to enter into the temple. Kimei nidas divosa titma. Rashi says, ki Tazria, rabos sha'afilu yuladaso machoy shenimcha v'nasa kein zera imot me'aleda. Is to tell us that even if a woman has exiting from her body a machoy, which is basically something that is pulpy-like, and it has become melted, and it looks almost like male seed. It's meaning to say a very, very early miscarriage. We're still going to say she is going to be ritually impure as though she gave birth. This seems to support the idea that we're going to say even a offspring, when a woman is pregnant at all, that any issue is going to be considered like it's a human. But there are other Talmudic sources which state that the first 40 days that a woman is pregnant, that's considered water in general, maya ba'alma, water in general, and it's not considered to be a human. So now we say kimei nidas divosa titma. According to her flow, she will be tamei. Rashi tells us kaseder kol tuma hamura benida. According to the order, according to all the laws of which a woman becomes tamei, and when her menstrual cycle is there, mitama betumas leida, she's going to be tamei as though she gave birth. Niftach hakever below dam. Even if you see the dishwasher there, Eliezer, you might want to take it in before it pours. All right, I'll help you. Below dam. Let's say she somehow gives birth without any blood, she's still going to be ritually impure for 7 days. The kever is called the womb. It's interesting that kever is the term the rabbis use for the womb. It's also the term for grave. That's what we call rabbinic poetry. Why do you think they use the same term? I don't know, but maybe it's because the woman has a loss, or maybe it's because it's like this dark abyss that we don't know what goes on in there. We don't know what goes on in there. There's a powerful story that Rabbi Maurice Lamb tells in his book, Jews in Death and Mourning, and Jewish Way in Death and Mourning, but it's an ancient midrash. I think actually, I remember from the Gemara, and it compares that when there's two children who are in the womb, and the woman is about to give birth, and they're fighting, and there's a skeptic and a believer, and the skeptic says, "I don't want to go out," and the believing fetus says, "No, we have to go out. It's a better world. It's a better world we're going to." And the cynic says, "No, we're going to stay right here in the womb." And the time comes, and the first baby starts going down the birth canal, and he gets pushed out, and the one is behind and screaming, "No, don't go!" And then he comes out, and all of a sudden he hears shrieking. He hears shrieking and crying, and even a slap. And the one who's behind says, "You see, I told him this is this horrible place." And he doesn't realize that where did the baby go to? To the shrieks are the shrieks of Mazel Tov. The cries are the cries of joy. And the slap was getting him to breathe. And so that was that's a metaphor for death. When you go on to the next world, we're sitting there crying. When a rabbinic thought, they've gone on to the Olam HaEmes, to the world of truth, where there is the Olam Shekulo Chayim. Yes, Yafa has a question. Or a point. I don't know if you have a question.
The word that is used for womb is rechem.
Rechem,
like
yeah.
Rachamim.
Exactly. Rechem is womb is mercy. Also kever, though. It's also kever, this which is typically grave. A very good point. It's the same idea. Okay, so now divosa. What does the word divosa mean? Rashi says lashon davar hazav migufa, something that flows from the body. Lashon achar, lashon madve v'choli. It's illness. She'ini sharo adam shelo techaleh rosha ve'ivara kibedin aleha. Now, when a woman has blood, her body feels sick and heavy. That's what Rashi says. Okay. Uvayom hashmini, back to the verse. Uvayom hashmini yimol b'sar orlaso. On the 8th day, if the boy is born, on the 8th day, he must circumcise his foreskin. Now we say chapter 12, verse 4. Ushloshim yom ushloshes yamim teishev b'dmei tara. For 33 days she shall remain with her blood, pure blood, meaning to say, that's what I was saying before. The next 33 days she sees the blood will be considered not tameh. She's biblically speaking allowed to be with her husband. But there is a limitation. Even though she's biblically speaking ritually pure, she's still not allowed to touch the sacred food. And she cannot enter into the temple until she completes her days of purity, meaning to say until after day 40. And on day 41, she's going to have to bring a sacrifice. She is what's called mechusare kapara, that after she gives birth to a male or female and she counts through the days of her ritual impurity, she's still, over the next period of time, 33 days for a boy and 66 days for a girl, she's going to be still unable to enter into the temple until she brings a sacrifice on either day 41 for a male or day 81 for a female. She's what's called mechusar kapara. She's still lacking atonement. She's reached this level of incomplete atonement. There are 4 people who are this category of mechusar kapara. Who are the 4 people who are missing atonement? Anybody know? There are 4 categories of people. There's the zav and the zava, the male and the female who have this flow from their body. the mitzora, the person who is a leper, who could be a male or a female, and the yoledis, and this woman who gives birth. Okay, so Rashi says here, Teishe, excuse me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu shakol yedibro. Ein Teishe, Rashi says, El Lashon akva or la'akev, like to stay, to remain. Vateshvu b'kedesh, vayeshev ve'onei mamre, means she remains in her state of, with her, she shall stay in is pure blood. B'dmei ta'ara, meaning to say, aval pi sheroah, even though she sees blood coming from her source, she's still going to be considered tahora, ritually pure. B'dmei ta'ara, Rashi says, it's not her. It's not loma pik hey who shem davar kamo tohar. It's a noun. It's the pure blood. You may tara mapik hey. You may tohar shala. Then with the mapik hey, with the dot in there, it means it is her blood, her purity. Lo tika. She cannot touch the sacred food. Azara la'ochal. This is a prohibition that she's not allowed to eat the sacred food, like we learned in Tractate Yevamot. Bekol kodesh. She cannot touch the sacred food, l'rabot et truma, meaning to say, excuse me, she's also not allowed to eat the truma. What is the truma? Anybody remember? The truma is the sacred food, but not the temple sacrificial food, but this is the tithe that people give to the Kohen. Yom aruch. So Rashi says this is considered one long tvul yom. What's a tvul yom? A tvul yom, and this is why it's so important to study the Rashi, because these are very important concepts that no rabbi is going to give a sermon about. You're never going to get this if you wait for a rabbi to give a sermon, because it's not exciting. It's not really sermonic material. It'll put the crowd to sleep. But this is essentially important. And so, because if we don't get these fundamental basics, then we're just like swimming in a sea without any signs or guideposts. So basically, her category is, Rashi's telling us that she's like a tful yom. What's a tful yom? That if a person becomes ritually impure, how do you become ritually impure? We're not talking about a case where you became ritually impure by touching a dead body, but rather you became ritually impure by, let's say, touching a rodent or a carcass. So then these are lesser forms of tumah. So then you immerse in the mikvah, but still, once you immerse in the mikvah, you're not able right away immediately to eat the truma, this food. If you're a Kohen, you can't eat this holy food, but you have to wait until such time that you nightfall. So after you immerse in the mikvah, you still need to wait till nightfall, and then you can, and only then can you eat the truma. So Rashi's telling us that after her 7 days, even though she's immersed in the mikvah, she has to wait another 33 days. Those 33 days, she's like this tfulas yom. It's like one long day for her that she cannot eat the truma or enter into the temple until she brings these sacrifices. That's what Rashi says. This is tfulas yom aruch. Shetavu l'sov shiva. She had immersed in the mikvah after 7 days. And she's not going to be ritually pure until the 40th day at night. The next day she could bring her sacrificial atonement. Then Rashi, okay, the next verse. And if she gives birth to a female, then she is ritually impure for 2 weeks. Kinidata, like the Nido woman. And then for 66 days, she has to remain in her state of ritual impurity. Okay, but before we get up to that, why is it the case that for a female, she waits twice as long? Why does she wait for a female? Why is everything doubled for a female? For a female, she has 14 days of ritual impurity, and then 66 days of her tfulat yom, where she cannot eat from the sacrificial food. Why is it twice as long for a female?
Is that something to do with the hormones of the female, the daughter?
I mean that she has got. So that's what some want to say, that it's because the law. That why is she? What is the ritual impurity? It's the loss of life. That there was life inside of her, and she's missing that now. Of course, she's created life, but this is the rabbis, I think, recognizing that there's this concept of, even though birth is an amazing thing, that there is on some level a loss for the mother who's carrying the baby as well. There's on some level a pregnancy loss. And so if she's carrying a female, it's double the loss because the female was able to create life as well. That's what some want to suggest. What'd you say, Shepsa?
Just guessing.
That what?
The woman was created from man, so it's two beings. I don't know.
Oh, so a woman was created from man. Very nice. So therefore, it's like two beings. Very nice. Another theory is that the male has the bris, so therefore the bris is the equivalent of a week. And anyway, so now we go. There's a lot of commentaries there. Maybe Meyer spotted something. There's a lot of commentaries on this point. Maybe in our parsha class tomorrow at 12:30, we're back on. Maybe we'll address that and look into it. Yes, Aviva.
Since there's no sacrifices today in our temple, is there at any time, any comparable weights now for purity or so that, since.
So it's a very good point. So first of all, the temple will be rebuilt probably tomorrow. And then any woman who's giving birth is going to have to come to the temple and bring this sacrificial offering. But until that point, why is this relevant? It's only relevant in the sense that the blood that she sees after 1 week for a boy or 2 weeks for a girl she's still prohibited to be with her husband. But that blood is only rabbinically prohibited. And we say, okay, only rabbinically, but it's still prohibited, but we can be more lenient. We can be more lenient in certain areas. It's a rabbinic prohibition, not a biblical prohibition. So that's always a fundamental question. But today, when the temple be rebuilt, a woman who's given birth is going to have to go and bring a sacrifice. So, uvimoos yimei tara, and when she completes her days of ritual purity, leben or labat, for a son or a daughter, tavi keves ben shnato ola. What does she bring? She brings a lamb for an ola, uven yona otor lechatas, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove. Is either a young pigeon or a mature bird for a sin offering. Al Pesach Ol Moed El Kohen, to the entrance to the Ol Moed towards the Kohen. So she has to bring a sacrifice. What does she bring? She's bringing an ola and a chatas. And the chatas is a bird offering, and the ola is a sheep, a lamb. Vikrivo of Hashem, and he shall offer before God. V'chiper aleh, and this will be an atonement for her. V'taramim kordameh, and she will be richly purified from the source of her blood. Zos toras hayoledes v'zachar u'nekeva. This is the law of the woman who gave birth for the male or the female. She tells us, really all that's required is one of them, the ola or the chatas. The one who comes to do the atonement, the ritual purity is dependent upon such a person. Okay. Meaning to say that before this, Utara Mikal Sha'ad Kan Kriyat Meah, up until this point, she's considered ritually impure. But now we have another category here. Now, first, there's two special categories to this woman who gave birth. One is that she was considered to be, of course, the great question that all the commentaries struggle with is, why is she bringing a sin offering if she gave birth? Yes, Yafa.
Because she yelled at her husband.
So that, yeah, probably while she was, that's one of the answers is that she certainly said certain things while she was giving birth, which she probably regrets. But I can tell you that, thank God, we've been through this experience. Obviously, I've been next to my wife when she's giving birth. She never yelled at me. So, I mean, in that context, she might have thought something, but typically speaking, you don't bring a sin offering for a thought. So that is one of the classic answers. But again, we're wondering, like, what's the sin? So what's the sin? Not every woman has, and even if she did yell at her husband, if we're going to start requiring sin offerings every time somebody yells at a spouse, there's going to be an enormous amount of sin offerings in this world. I mean, seriously, nobody here would ever yell at their spouse, but some people in the world have been known to be frustrated with their spouse on occasion. That shouldn't require a sin offering. I mean, well, there's no indication that it ever does require a sin offering. So this is a classic question, many, many answers. Maybe I'll take that up tomorrow in our Torah study. Why a sin offering, and also, okay, why is a woman double? Okay, so, but now we've said there's another category here. We've been talking about the 4 or Mechusar Kippurim, and now we have another category which is called the Ola V'Yored, the Korban Ola V'Yored. What's a Korban Ola V'Yored? That this is what's called, what's it called when people pay a different level of income tax based upon their income? What's that called?
Progressive income.
Progressive, what?
Means-based.
Progressive means graduated
income.
income tax. So this sacrificial offering is going to be dependent upon how much money you have. So let's say she can't afford the lamb for the Ola offering. Then she has to take 2 birds, two turtle doves, or 2 young pigeons. One is for an Ola, one's for a sin offering. And so then the Kohen will serve as an atonement for her. So this is what's called the Korban Ola V'Yored. Yeah, there's the Korban where if you can't afford it, you have the option of doing a cheaper offering. So what does Rashi say? So Rashi tells us, the Torah only puts it first, in the Torah's verse, but when it comes to the sacrificial offering, the sin offering comes prior to the Ola. You bring the sin offering first. And one of the reasons why the sin offering always has to come before the Ola is because first you have to repent, and only then can you bring the Ola offering. Okay, so now we're going to move into the category of the affliction known as Metzora. Metzora is usually translated in English as leprosy, but anybody who opens up any book on the Torah will see that the Jewish commentaries don't call leprosy because it really is not a biblical disease, but not a medical disease, but a spiritual disease. That's why you have to go to the Kohen for the purification. But that being said, I always find that these portions really talk about how we deal as a community with somebody who has a physical ailment in their especially a communicable disease where they're isolated and quarantined from the community. How do we look at that person? How do we allow them to re-enter into society? And it's not just a physical ailment, but also anybody who's done something which has caused them to be separated from the community. How do we create a process where they can re-enter into society? Incredibly difficult for a person who's been basically isolated from the community to be allowed back in. And there needs to be a ritual. That's like we're studying Tractate Sota. Oh, the Tractate Sota allows the woman who's accused of adultery, it allows her a path back into the marriage with her husband. It allows them a path forward. This is also what's going on here, that a person who has this affliction on themselves is going to be allowed a path back in. So yes, Rabbi Yosef.
In both cases, the sota and the leper, they have to contact the Kohen. So they have to make the first step of wanting to come back into to clear their name or to.
But the sota is not the one who contacts the Kohen. Her husband is.
Her husband, I'm saying, but the Kohen doesn't go around looking for lepers or for sotas to help their family life.
Normally with the Mitzvah, it has to come from the person, has to go to the Kohen who has to diagnose him.
Right. So I think that
Yeah.
that's part of it, especially since it's a spiritual disease. That like I
Exactly.
did something wrong that or maybe something happened that I was wronged, and
Yeah.
now.
Very nice. Very nice point. Okay, we'll just do one more verse. Vayidaber Adonai Moshe Lemor. God spoke to Moshe, saying, Adam kiyeh be'or b'saro, a person will have on the skin of his flesh, se'es, o sapachas, o baharas. These are very difficult terms to translate. Se'es is usually like a spot that's like a raised spot. Sapachas or baharas are bright spots, and one is brighter than the other. And they're an affliction on his skin. And he's brought to Aaron or to one of his sons, the Kohanim. Rashi says, each one is whiter than the next. Names of afflictions. Baharas, it's chabarburas tiare. Tire, I don't know what that means in French. Tiare. Bahir, it is luminous. El Aron Gams Xeris Hakosafu Shein Tumas Megayim Vitarasan LLP Kohen. The only way you could have this diagnosed is if a Kohen speaks it into existence. A regular, you can't go to a doctor and the doctor says this is saras. That means nothing. Only the Kohen can diagnose it. Only the Kohen can speak it into existence. All right, let us daven at this point. Eric, will you lead us?